A wave of international condemnation has followed Israel's recent military strikes on Iran, as global powers voice serious concern about the implications for already fragile nuclear negotiations. The United Nations, China, the European Union, Saudi Arabia, and a number of other nations have issued strong statements criticizing the strikes, warning that the escalation threatens regional stability and undermines ongoing diplomatic efforts to resolve tensions surrounding Iran's nuclear program. The strikes, reportedly aimed at key military and nuclear-related sites in Iran, have been described by Israeli officials as necessary preemptive action in response to what they allege are imminent threats posed by Tehran. However, international observers argue that such unilateral military moves severely jeopardize the possibility of a peaceful resolution and risk plunging the region into a broader conflict. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed deep alarm, stating that any further escalation between Israel and Iran could have devastating consequences, not only for the Middle East but for global security as a whole. He called for immediate restraint and urged both sides to avoid further provocations. His comments were echoed by the UN Security Council, which convened an emergency session to discuss the deteriorating situation and reiterated its support for a diplomatic path forward. China issued a stern rebuke of the Israeli actions, emphasizing that all parties must remain committed to dialogue and avoid actions that could derail the nuclear talks. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry said the strikes were extremely irresponsible and unhelpful at a time when diplomacy is already hanging by a thread. China, a key stakeholder in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, has been actively pushing for the revival of the agreement and sees military confrontation as an existential threat to that effort. The European Union, which has been acting as a mediator in the indirect talks between the United States and Iran, expressed grave concern over the attacks. Josep Borrell, the EU's foreign policy chief, warned that Israel's actions could make it nearly impossible to bring Iran back to the negotiating table. He noted that while the EU does not overlook Iran's controversial nuclear activities, the only viable solution lies in sustained diplomatic engagement, not military aggression. Saudi Arabia, which has historically viewed Iran as a regional rival, surprised some observers with its sharp criticism of Israel. A statement from the Saudi Foreign Ministry condemned the strikes as a dangerous and destabilizing development and called for de-escalation. Riyadh's position reflects a broader shift in the region, where concerns about a spiraling conflict and its economic repercussions, particularly on oil markets, are prompting even traditional adversaries to advocate for restraint. Other nations, including Turkey, Russia, and Brazil, have also voiced opposition to the strikes. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan described the Israeli actions as reckless, while Russia emphasized the need for a multilateral response to prevent further deterioration. Brazil, currently a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, has called for an urgent ceasefire and re-engagement in the Vienna talks. The timing of the strikes has added a layer of complexity to the already strained negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. While the United States has not officially endorsed Israel's actions, it has also not condemned them outright, choosing instead to call for calm on all sides. This ambivalent stance has drawn criticism from some quarters, who argue that Washington's hesitancy could embolden further unilateral actions and undermine global diplomatic unity. As tensions remain high, many fear that this latest confrontation could mark a tipping point, setting the stage for a wider military conflict in the Middle East. With nuclear talks hanging in the balance, the global community now faces the urgent task of steering the involved parties back toward diplomacy before the window for peaceful resolution closes entirely.